Today I'm going to be talking about sports. Uh, and I'm going to go back to when I was a high school student. Not that I was good enough to make any of my teams in high school, although I tried. But in phys ed class, gym class, annually, we would have to do what was called the Marine Corps fitness test. And the one of the things that you had to do in the test, there was a lot of running and push-ups and all sorts of stuff, was pull-ups. You had to do pull-ups, and most guys could do maybe one or two, three maybe pull-ups, and that would be it. But a good friend of mine, Mike Stranieri, who we called Stran, here's a photo of Stran. Uh, he was good at the pull-ups, and he's on the bar, and he's doing, and we're counting them all off, right? There's whatever 30, 40 guys around, and the phys ed teachers, and we're counting them off. One, two, three, four. Mike is just going. Six, seven. He's slowing down a little bit now. Eight, nine. And we're all like, yeah, cheering him on. He's going for 10. He's going, and he gets about halfway. He's sticking his chin up and he's stuck. And all of a sudden, the delicate way to put this, he breaks wind and it propels him right, right over the bar. And we're all cheering, way to go, Mike, way to go, Mike. And so yeah, he was the pull-up champ, at least of our class. Uh, every year, I think it was the Spanish Club or the Spanish Honor Society, one of those, would do a fundraiser because they would take a trip every spring to Spain during Easter break. They would go to Spain for a week, 10 days, however long it was, and they did a big fundraiser to defray the cost, so the guys wouldn't have to, spend a fortune to get there. And this way, everybody could go who was in the club. And their fundraiser was something called donkey basketball. Here's a photo. Now, I had never heard of donkey basketball before I got to Holy Cross, and I tell you the truth, I haven't met anybody who's ever seen donkey basketball. It's quite the athletic event. So in any event, I was asked if I wanted to play. You know, get up on the donkey and you play basketball. I mean, you kick the donkey or whatever. You get the donkey to move to the basket. You take a shot, and they had a series of games. I forget exactly who played, but the main event was the seniors versus the faculty. That was the big one. So I was asked if I wanted to participate, and I said something along the lines of, "You're not getting my ass on any ass." So I was not gonna participate as a player, but I said I'd love to do the play-by-play, and so I did. I was the play-by-play guy, and the gym was packed. The Holy Cross gym sat, I guess, about a 800 to 1,000. It was fairly big in terms of bleacher space, and it was packed with spectators. And there I was doing the game. And one of the things that, of course, would happen from time to time is the donkeys would, defecate on the court, and you have these guys that were with the company that provided the donkeys for this. They would come running out with shovels and brooms, sweep it up, and get it off the floor. So that was donkey basketball. If you ever get a chance to see donkey basketball, I highly recommend that you go and take a look because it's quite the event. So there's a couple of quick stories from when I was a high school student. Now, eventually I was going to become a coach, and when I was in college, I decided that I'd like to try my hand at coaching because I'd always played a lot of ball, always interested in sports, and so I decided to go back to my parish CYO, the Catholic Youth Organization, who ran, you know, teams. They had athletic leagues. It's a pretty big deal in Queens. and Brooklyn as well, I guess. So in any case, I went back to my parish. I said I'd be interested in coaching a team and a baseball team, and they had an opening for they needed an eighth grade baseball coach. I said I'll take the eighth grade team, no problem. At the time I was a junior in college. I was a secondary ed major and so forth. So I coached the baseball team along with my good friend Billy Powers. He was my assistant coach, and I remember one of the kids, Mike Gordak, terrific kid. He was really a character, but he was a really good kid. In any case, our first game, to give you a sense of Mike Gordak, our first game, the kids are all coming over to me before the game starts, and they're saying, "Coach, hold my watch, hold my ring, hold my wallet." And Gordak comes over to me and he says, "Coach, hold my wrench." And he had this big like pipe wrench. I said, "What is this for?" He said he had a loose nut or something on his bike, and he had to constantly tighten it up. So I had to hold his wrench for him. So we're playing a game at some point in the season, and we have the bases loaded, and the game is pretty close, and Mike is coming up. So I called timeout. I'm coaching over at third, and I call Mike down, and I said, "Mike, here's what I want you to do. I want you to kind of lean in, turn a little bit, and let the pitch hit you right in your upper arm." Oh, Mike says, "Oh, come on, coach. I want to get hit by a pitch." I said, "Mike, it's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt. Let it hit you in the upper arm, and you'll hardly even feel it. And you'll drive in a run. You'll get an RBI, and, we'll take the lead." "Oh, come on, coach. Come on, Mike." So I sent him up to the plate, and he gets in there, and sure enough, first pitch comes in. It's inside. He does exactly what I told him to do. He turns, he leans in a little bit, and the ball hits him right up here. He turns to me. He's all excited. He said, "Coach, it didn't hurt." And he runs down to first base, and we got the RBI. Now, I guess the pitcher didn't feel so good about the guy he just hit, saying it didn't really hurt. But that was Mike. He was a terrific kid who did as I asked him to do. And I realized at that point that I guess I got to be careful about what I tell kids to do, because they're going to listen to me, because I'm after all in charge. So I go to Dominican Commercial. I don't coach there. I go to St. Mary's, and I didn't coach at St. Mary's. I was asked to coach the baseball team, and I declined. I don't remember why. It was probably because I was busy with grad classes and so forth. But I declined the opportunity to coach at St. Mary's. But when I get to Newtown, in the I was there for 2 years. The first year I was there, it was middle of the year. I guess it was around February or so. And they had a salad bar in the teachers' cafeteria at Newtown. So I'm online for the salad bar, and I'm dressed in like a golf shirt and a pair of jeans. Maybe a sweater. It was the winter, I guess, so maybe a sweater and a pair of jeans. In any case, behind me was the athletic director. And so she taps me on the shoulder and she says, "Hey, you look athletic." Really? Okay. She said, "How'd you like to coach the boys handball team?" And I said, "Well, how much does it pay?" She told me. And I said, "Sure." I mean, I knew a little bit about handball. I had played a little bit as a kid. I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll coach the handball team. What's involved?" And she went through the whole deal with me and what I have to do and so forth. So I said, "Fine, I'll do the handball team." So that was my first high school coaching position was at the Newtown High School, the boys handball team. And I'm having tryouts, and I got a couple of kids that were sensational. I mean, in retro, at the time I didn't really know, but after coaching handball for a number of years, I realized that these two guys were among the best players, would have been among the best players in the city. They were that good. So one of the things you have to do when you put your roster together is you have to check their grades to see if they're eligible. In order to be eligible, you have to pass 5 major classes plus gym. So one kid, I when I pull his record, I see, oh, good, he's passed everything, but he failed gym the last semester because he just cut gym. He didn't go. So all right, so he's out. The other kid I take a look at, and he failed everything. He had no chance. So neither of these guys were gonna play. So that took me from what would have been a really a pretty good team down to not very good at all. Because you have to move everybody up and so forth. And one match I remember, we were playing a match at Bryant High School over in Astoria, Long Island City, Bryant High School. And I was amazed because you go to a handball match, there's nobody there. It's just the teams, the coaches, that no officials. The kids call the games themselves, and so it's just the players and the coaches, and and the coach. That's all that's at these games. There are no spectators. But at this Bryant, they had spectators. They had about, I don't know, 50, 60 kids staying after school to watch the match against Newtown, and Bryant was they were very good. And it had this one kid, their number one player, the final match, the final game, I should say, in a match, are the two best players, the two number one singles players. They play the last match, uh, and so they had already won. They had beaten us, so they're playing, and so the number one kid from Bryant, who was really good, starts to kind of fool around, and he's showing up my kid. The crowd is all laughing and so forth. And then my kid, who was just a freshman at the time, guy hits a shot. He returns it through his legs. He hits like a trick shot through his legs, and he hits it, and it's a killer. It's a roller. Hits the wall, and it rolls. You can't return it. And the crowd goes nuts, and they're all ragging on their kid from Bryant that the freshman showed him up, and then he stopped fooling around after that, and he played his hardest, which was good. But my kid showed him up, and it was pretty nice that there was a crowd of kids there. I thought that was kind of nice that there'd be some spectators. So I go from Newtown. Of course, the Holy Trinity. I don't coach at Holy Trinity. I'm an administrator. I don't coach there at all. And then I go to Townsend Harris. And my first day at Townsend Harris, I went over because I wanted to see if I could coach the handball team. So at the first faculty meeting, I went to Wanda Nix, who was the athletic director. I'll talk more about her later. Just a terrific athletic director, terrific person. So I explained to her that I'm a coach, and to be a coach, you have to take classes. You got to get a certificate from the PSAL, and to be a certified coach just can't be. Hey, I'd like to coach a team. Uh, so I had done all that, and there's first aid courses you got to take, and CPR. So I had all that stuff. So she said, "Well, I got two openings. One is for boys handball in the spring, so you can have that. It's yours if you want it. And the second opening I have is in the fall. It's JV girls JV volleyball. Now I didn't know anything about volleyball other than playing at picnics and stuff. I didn't know anything. I said, sure, I'll do the volleyball team because at that point I just wanted to coach, and it's a great way to make extra money. If you're a teacher, it's probably the best way to make extra money is by coaching. So I coached the girls volleyball team. I really had no idea what I was doing, but neither did the kids. So it kind of worked out. But I remember one kid, name was Holly. It was a very sweet girl. And our first match, we're playing at Jamaica High School, and she was one of my starters. So she's on the floor, and I'm out. I'm kind of talking to the girls, and I look down, and her shoes, the sneakers are untied. I said, Holly, your sneakers are untied. You got to tie your sneakers. She says, no, no. I said, what do you mean no? She says, I like them untied. I said, well, that's very good, Holly, but you can't go onto the court with untied sneakers. You got to tighten up those laces, and you got to tie them. You're gonna be competing now. We can't have your sneakers falling off. So that was girls JV basketball. It was a wonderful experience. I didn't know what in the world I was doing, but we certainly had a lot of fun. So that was in the fall. In the spring, I start with the boys handball team. And the boys handball team for me was great. I mean, I coached volleyball, handball, basketball, baseball, and fencing. And they all had their kinds of ups and downs and good points and bad points. But handball, by far and away, was the easiest thing for me to coach. We just went out onto the handball courts. It was a little tough at the beginning of the season because it was in March and it was cold. But once you got to April, things started to warm up. The season ended in, I guess, early to mid-May. Uh, and I would play handball with the kids. So I was getting paid to coach, and I was just going out there and teaching them how to play, and then playing with them, and it was terrific. It was one of the activities I did with my friends. Over the years we would play handball, and I did that well into my 40s. I was out with my buddies playing handball. So this was a piece of cake. And handball matches were quick, very quick. I can remember twice. Once we were playing a match at Francis Lewis, and a match consisted of 5 games, 3 singles, 2 doubles. And at Francis Lewis, they had 6 courts, so you played all the games at the same time. And handball games were 21-point games, and if the teams weren't evenly matched, one team was a lot better than the other. Those games went fast. It would be 21-5, 21-2, 21-10, 21-0, and you'd be done in 15 minutes. It'd take you longer to warm up than it would to actually play the match. And so we played at Francis Lewis one day, and it was one of those matches. They were a lot better than we were, and they just wiped us out. And we were done in 30 minutes. The whole match was we warmed up, played the match in 15 minutes, and we were done. And I'm walking out of the Francis Lewis outdoor athletic complex, the handball courts, the baseball fields, the tennis courts, and so forth. And in is walking Jim Murray, who was the coach of I don't know if it was the boys tennis team or the girls tennis team, and they were playing their match at Francis Lewis. So I said, "Hey Jim, how's it going?" He said, "What are you here for?" I said, "Handball." Oh, okay. So I'll see you at the end. I said, "We're done." He didn't even start yet. We were finished. He was there until for hours with the tennis match because they only had, I guess, 2 courts. So, and then another time we were playing at August Martin. No, excuse me, at not August Martin, at why can't I remember the name? Andrew Jackson High School. And the coach at Andrew Jackson High School was a guy by the name of Chuck Granby. Chuck Granby was a legendary basketball coach, but he also coached the handball team and the boys varsity handball team, and they were not good at handball. The kids from Andrew Jackson, and for the most part, the handball team was the JV basketball team because Chuck would go see the JV basketball players and say, "Hey, any of you guys interested in playing varsity basketball next year?" And they were like, "Yeah, coach. Well, yeah, definitely, coach, definitely." He says, "Okay, here are these handball gloves. Put these handball gloves on and get out to the handball court because you're gonna have to play some handball first." So they did. So we were way better than them. So it was the same thing. They had 6 courts, played all 5 games at the same time. We wiped them out 21-2, 21-0, 21-3. It was just a complete destruction. And so I'm walking out with the team after about 20 minutes of being there. I'm walking out with the team, and in comes Wanda Nix because she wanted to watch. She wanted to watch the match. I said, "Sorry, Wanda, you're too late. We finished. We finished already." So that was handball. Handball was pretty easy money, and some great kids. And here's one of my handball players, Hugo Navarro, I believe was his last name. Uh, Hugo was a terrific kid, good handball player. I believe he played first doubles for me. Uh, but he was also a very good student, Hugo. He was in science research. I did social science research. And so I was talking to you about the project he was doing, for his science research. In those days was a Westinghouse project. And so he explained to me that he was studying the impact of caffeine on fruit flies. I said, "Oh, I had no idea. I had no idea that fruit flies drank coffee." And he looks at me. He thought I was serious. And he's explaining to me. I said, "I know, Hugo. I know." So he was a very good kid. Now, one year I had a pretty good team. We went to the playoffs one time, and I remember the crowd being at Bryant High School. So I wanted to have a crowd of kids at one of our matches that I knew we were going to win. That's the way you do it. You're not going to bring a big crowd of kids to a match and then you lose the match. So I did all my classes. It was a Friday. We had a Friday match. And all my classes, I posted a gigantic homework assignment for the weekend. Huge. It was ridiculous. It would take hours to do this homework assignment. And I said to the kids, I said, you got a choice. You could do the homework assignment, or you come to the handball match this afternoon and bring a friend if you can. So I wound up having like 150 kids up at this handball match. It was terrific. It was amazing. The other team was like totally intimidated by all these kids yelling and screaming and cheering. It was a lot of fun. So so that's a little bit about handball at uh, at Townsend Harris. Uh, I then a couple years later, I was asked if there was an opening. I shouldn't say I was asked. There was an opening for a JV girls basketball coach at Townsend Harris. So I told Wanda, I said I would like to do that. Not giving me a sport that I know something about. Yeah, I'd like to do the JV girls basketball. So she said fine. So I got the JV girls basketball team. And I did that for a number of years. And the with the JV girls, of course, you'd have turnover every year because you'd have the freshmen and sophomores, and then they would move on up to varsity, and you'd start over again. But I got to tell you, the girls, they were some tough kids. I was really impressed. Here's a picture of my first team. Uh, Now the girl that was kind of laying down across the on the floor across everybody was Jen, and she was my point guard. She was the best player on the team, and she was really good. And she was, I didn't know this, but she was a tough kid. It wasn't our first game, but it was one of our first games. We had to travel down to Beach Channel High School for a game. And we get to the game again. JV girls basketball, very few spectators. You might get a couple parents that come down to watch the game, maybe a couple kids, but for the most part, the gyms are empty. But at Beach Channel, it was crowded. They had a lot of kids that stayed to watch this game, and they were loud. They were raucous. It was good. I thought it was a pretty nice atmosphere. But it got a little testy at the end. The game was close. We were up a little bit late in the game. Jen gets fouled, so she's going to the foul line for a couple of shots. She knocks down the first shot. The crowd starts screaming, and somebody throws a water bottle at her from the crowd, and then the crowd all stands up. I got a little nervous. I ran out onto the court to get in between Jen and the and the crowd. I don't know what was going to happen. So the ref blows the whistle, tells everybody to sit down. I get off the court. I figured, Jennifer must be shooken up by this. It didn't phase her. She knocks down the next shot. We win the game, and it was pretty remarkable. Also on that team, girl standing in the back in the center. That's the photograph of them right over my shoulder. They gave me an autographed picture at the end of the season. Uh, Girl Tara, I don't know. I don't know where we were playing. It was on the road somewhere. Uh, and during a timeout, she tells me, she says, Mr. Scarnati, my toe is killing me. I said, okay, well, let's take a look. So, we didn't have any trainers or anything. It was just me. So take off a sneaker, take off her sock. I'll never forget this. And her big toenail was just hanging off. I mean, it was like, oh God. I said, okay, listen, well, I'll bandage it, and then see if you get your sock back on, but leave your sneaker off for a while. She says, leave my sneaker off. She says, I want to go back in the game. I said, go back in the game? How can you go back in the game with your toe? Like, she says, it just hurts. That's all. It's not going to get any worse if I go back in the game. I said, okay. So she goes back and she plays, and like nothing. Anybody else would have been foot up, wrapped it, head to the podiatrist, and not Tara. She was edging to get back into the game. Another team that I taught also had really tough girls on it. Here's a photograph of another team that I had at Townsend Harris. Now, two girls on that team were involved in incidents that were kind of nasty. Mary first. Mary was my point guard. She was about 5'2", very slight, very very, very cute. There was another girl on the team, uh, Talia, who looked from behind. They looked exactly the same. And at one game, I was saying, okay, Mary, I want you to go in. I want you to go in there now. Go to the scorer's table and go. And I'm like, have my hand, and I'm like, pushing her towards the scorer's table. She turns, she says, I'm Talia. I said, okay, Talia, so you go in. So in any event, we're playing at Springfield Gardens High School. Springfield Gardens High School was, I don't know, they had a sign as you walked in saying, this is a gun-free zone. Can't bring your gun in here. Oh, good. Well, good. It's good to know. So we're playing, and it's a tight game, but we're up, I would say fairly comfortably late in the game. And so the other coach wants her kids to foul our kids to stop the clock and try to extend the game, give them a chance to maybe catch up. So we have the ball. Mary has the ball. She's dribbling, and the coach is screaming, "Fouler, fouler!" And so the kid balls up her fist and punches Mary right in the face. The refs was stunned. It took them like a second or two before they blew the whistle. I was like, "What in the world?" Blows the whistle. Mary Mary starts to tear up a little bit. So, I call a timeout to see if she's okay and maybe have to take her out of the game, put a sub in for the foul shot. She says, no, no, I'm okay. I'm okay. I could shoot it. So she goes to the foul line. She knocks down the free throws. But that was Springfield Gardens High School. Those were some tough kids on Springfield Gardens, but my girls were able to stand up to it. Another team that was pretty tough that we played was August Martin High School. Now, the August Martin varsity girls team in those days was not only the top team in the city, they were one of the top teams in the state. And their JV team was also very good. We had a very difficult time trying to compete uh, with August Martin. But one year we're playing them a pretty tight game, and they had one kid who was really it was their top scorer, and she was killing us. So I switched my defense to, if you know anything about basketball, to a box and one. So four girls are playing a zone uh the lane, and I have one girl matched man to man, excuse me, player to player on this scorer from the other team. And I tell her, and my girl's name was Kathy. I said, Kathy, stick with this girl. Do not let her get the ball. Don't Once she gets the ball, she's gonna score. Don't let her get the ball. So she's playing her really tight. This kid's getting frustrated because she can't get open. They're not doing anything to try to not setting screens for her, not doing anything. So I don't even have to worry about switching or anything. Just play her tight. It's timeout. So my team comes over. Kathy comes over to me. She said, Mr. Scarnati, she says, that girl I'm guarding, She says if I don't let up on her, she's gonna punch me right in the face. And I said, Kathy, that's good because now you're frustrating her. She's not getting the ball. And hey, don't forget, if she punches you in the face, well, then she's going to be thrown out of the game. So we won't have to worry about her anymore. You're doing a great job, Kathy. So Kathy went out. She continued to play. The girl never punched her, but she shut her down. We lost the game anyway. But in any event, we were able to shut this kid down. Now another team that I had, and here's a picture of that team. We had a player, and I, for the life of me, can't remember her name, but she's the tall girl in the back of that photograph. She was about 6 foot 1 or 2 tall, and she was a sophomore. And the varsity coach, Larry Cerullo, said, I'm not going to put her on the varsity because she's never really played basketball before, but she's somewhat athletic, and I think maybe if she gets a season of JV, I might be able to, she might be a contributor on the varsity next year. Okay, so she was a project. I had to teach this girl how to play basketball, and what I wanted her to learn how to do was to stay in the lane, rebound. Offensively, we're not going to run any plays for you. Can't remember her name, Roseanne, I think maybe. We're not going to run any plays for you, but I want you to stay just outside the lane. And when shots go up, I want you to try to get a rebound if they miss, and then put the rebound right back in. Offensive rebound, put her right back in the basket because no one's going to block her shot because she was so much taller than everybody else. Okay, not really working out. But one game, I forget who we were playing. Sure enough, she gets the rebound and she puts it right back in the basket. And she's jumping up and down. Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, it was a defensive rebound. And so she actually scored a basket for the other team. And halfway down the court, she realized what she did, and she just went, "Oh no!" So don't worry about it. So she got better as she went on. Uh, Another girl was also on that team, Lita Moritz, I think was her last name. We practiced on Saturday mornings with the I always practiced the JV team on Saturday morning because we'd have the gym to ourselves. The varsity team never played or practiced on Saturdays. So we had a nice long practice every Saturday morning. And at one point, some of the parents asked me if they could stay to watch the practice because they would drive their kid in the morning like 9 o'clock on a Saturday, and they were just waiting outside. So one father asked if he could come in and watch. I said, of course you can. Tell the other parents you don't have to sit outside. You can come inside. I'm not hiding anything. You feel free. So they did, and it was nice having the parents there. They were all really very good. But Lita's dad was at one of the practices, and I was running a drill with them uh, to backpedal as they're retreating to play defense. So you can turn around and run, and if there's nobody's out ahead of you, turn around so you can see the ball and what the other team is doing, and backpedal into position. So we're doing this drill, and Lita falls down. Lita was terrific kid, a pretty good basketball player, and she was a tremendous leadership skills. I mean, she was just outstanding. So she falls down, and I turn and I see her on the floor. There's another group of kids that are now coming back. I said, Lita, get up. And she said, I can't. I hurt my wrist. I said, it's your wrist. It's not your leg. Get up. She said, I can't. It's both of them. So I blow the whistle. I go over to Lita to help her up, and she's just her wrists are like this. So I figured she jammed them, sprained them, something. I'm just gonna take her off to the side, give her some ice packs, and let her just sit out. Her dad comes down and says, "Well, I don't think she's going to be playing anymore today. I'd like to take her and get her wrists X-rayed to see what's up." I said, "That's a terrific idea. Go right ahead." I find out on Monday morning. I see one of her friends, and I said, "How's Lita? How are her? How's she doing?" She said, "Both her wrists are broken. Two broken wrists." I felt horrible. I called her up, talking to her. She was in great spirits. I said, "I'm so sorry." She says, "Oh, it's not your fault. I was clumsy. Whatever." And then she's out of school for a few days. She comes back in. She got the two wrists, both both in casts. It was just I've never done that. I've never done that drill again. But that was Lita. She was another one of those tough kids who you know had that mishap. Uh, I also coached for a season the boys varsity basketball team. Uh, the boys varsity basketball team, we were in the B division. It's based on the size of the school. So since our school was about 1,000, we were in the B division. The A division was for larger schools. But the thing about Townsend Harris is, although we were 1,000, uh, the school was 70% girls. So I was really only 300 boys at most that we had in the school. So it was difficult to field a competitive team, but we were much better than the smallest schools. But we couldn't compete with the bigger schools. We couldn't compete with Flushing High School and with Bryant High School. Those were schools with thousands of students. We had to play Long Island City High School. I mean, we just couldn't compete with those schools. And one of my players said kind of offhandedly, he says, we're the best of the sucky schools. That's not the way to put it, but in essence, he was true. We played a game against one of these new high schools, Renaissance High School or something in Queens, and it was a close game, back and forth, back and forth. Gets to the end of the game, and seconds left in the game. We're up by two, and a kid goes up for a shot on the other team, hits the shot, ties the game, but one of my guys fouled him. So now there's maybe a second left on the clock, and he's going to the foul line. He makes the foul shot, they win the game. Misses the foul shot, we go to overtime. So this kid is walking up to the line, and there's quite a few spectators at this particular game. And he's like, "Oh, I got this, no problem." And he's actually saying this. He's boasting how he's going to knock down the shot, he's going to win the game, and that's that. Pack up your stuff, we're going home. He gets the ball. Excuse me. He takes the worst foul shot I think I've ever seen. It hits the backboard about 2 feet to the right of the basket and up high. I mean, out of his hand, it had no chance. It bangs off the backboard, doesn't touch the rim. It was just an awful, awful foul shot. And this kid was boasting like he was just going to knock this down, no problem. We go on. We won the game in overtime. So that was the boys varsity basketball team. Now, one other thing about the team. My wife, Maureen, came to one of our games, and she sat, at Townsend Harris. She sat in the bleachers right behind me on the bench. And she tells me after the game, she says, "Man," she says, "how do you take it?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Your team. I mean, they stink." I said, "Well, we're not that bad." No, 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 not that they stink that they can't play. They stink. They smell. So what do you want? They're playing basketball. They're sweating up, and that's what it's going to be. So I said, I go, I don't even notice it. I'm in the van with them, after games, driving them back to school. I don't smell anything. But of course, my wife Maureen has this super sense of of smell. I'll tell you a quick side story. We were driving one day on the Cross Island Parkway heading north, driving past Belmont Park, and it was in the summer. So the windows were rolled up, the air conditioning was on. And as we're driving past Belmont Park, Maureen says, "Man, those horses stink." I said, "Those horses stink? How could you possibly smell the horses at Belmont Park?" in a car with the windows up, the air conditioning on, doing 50 miles an hour, driving past Belmont Park on the Cross Island Parkway. But she swears to this day that those horses stunk, and so did my basketball team. So I don't think that they smelled too terribly bad. Uh, Also uh, at Townsend Harris, uh, for years they went without a varsity baseball team, contending that there weren't enough boys. They really couldn't field a competitive team, and but this one boy really pushed for it, pushed for it, pushed for it. He raised some money and so forth. So finally they relented and they started a club team. And they competed as a club team playing exhibition games, I guess, for a season. And then they wanted to take it varsity and compete in the PSAL. So I volunteered to coach because the person who was Chris Hackney was coaching the team as a club team, but he wasn't a certified coach. So I became the first boys varsity basketball coach at Townsend Harris. Varsity, excuse me, the first boys varsity baseball coach at Townsend Harris. And we had a pretty good team, but it was like the boys varsity basketball team, where we were better than the schools that we were similar to, but we had a very difficult time competing against Forest Hills High School, who was also in our division, as well as Flushing High School. And not only were those schools bigger, but they also had their own athletic fields. So they had their own baseball field right on their campus, and we didn't. We played like all the other little schools in that division, that B division. We played in a city park. So uh, I can remember a couple of things about the baseball team. Here's a picture of the baseball team. Uh, these guys were a lot of fun. I have to say, these guys were a lot of fun. I coached them for 2 seasons. We did okay. We held our own. Uh, and these guys were a lot of fun. That's the team jersey, my number 5, hanging right behind me, and that's a cap over to the side as well. And this is an autographed baseball from the team that that second season. No, excuse me. This is from the first season. They gave me an autographed ball at the end of the season, which I thought was very nice. I still have it all these years, over 20 years later. So, a couple of quick stories about the boys varsity baseball team. We had this one kid on the team, our second baseman. Uh, Greg, I think was his first name. His last name was Ersbaumer. I always just called him Ersbaumer. Uh, and as I said, he was our second baseman. He was a pretty good player. He was a pretty good second baseman. He was a pretty good hitter. He was a nice player. So he's out on the field before the game starts. We had just taken the field, and so they're throwing the ball around. The pitcher's warming up, and so forth. And he's got his cap on sideways, which I didn't like. So I scream out to him. I said, Earthbomber. I said, you got 2 choices. You could put that cap on properly, or you come sit on the bench with me. Your choice. So he straightens out his cap. The umpire walks over to me with his back. He's just kind of like walking sideways, and he just kind of turns to me slightly and says, "Thanks, coach," because he didn't like it either with the kid with the hat on sideways. So that was Earthbomber. He was a good player. He was a good player for us. He got a big hit in one game. Last inning, we were down a run. He got a double, drove in the tying run. Unfortunately, he tried to stretch the double into a triple, and that was my fault. I should have stopped him, but I was too concerned about the runner going home. I lost sight of Earthbomber. I look up, he's steaming into third, and he's going to be out by 10 feet. Of course, he should have stayed at second and would have given us a chance to win the game. Instead, we lose in extra innings. But that's okay. He got the big hit. He got the big hit to tie the game. I remember this one umpire. I forget his name, but he was a pretty good umpire. But he was a real stickler all sorts of rules and so forth. And we're playing a game at Flushing High School. Flushing High School, their athletic field, there were no bleachers, no kind of stands or anything. There were no dugouts, so we were just on the kind of on the sideline. And it was a pretty good distance back to the fence at the end of the field. And it was a Friday afternoon, and a couple of the students came to watch the game. And one of the kids was in the band, and he had his saxophone with him. So he's playing his saxophone, you know, on the back by the fence, pretty far from the field. And the umpire comes over to me, and he says, "That saxophone has to stop. They have to stop. Can't be playing the saxophone, in the bench area." I go over to him. I say, "Hey, wait a minute. You know, these are kids. They're having fun. They're not. There is no bench area. These guys are 30 feet back from the field." I said, "I want you to show me the rule that says you can't play a saxophone at a baseball game." So he started laughing, and he said, "Okay, coach, it's all right." So that was the saxophone incident at Flushing High School. That was a disaster of a game. I'm not going to get into the details of that game. I was not happy with the team's performance in that particular game. One of the things that the baseball team would do, I would have them do after every practice, is I called it base running. And what they had to do at the end of the practice, they all had to line up at home plate. They had to, run out a single, sprint down to first base, jog back to home plate, and then run out a double, and then cut across the pitcher's mound, jog back to home plate, and then run out a triple, jog back to home plate, and then run out a home run. So it was not an easy thing to do. And they hated doing it, and I don't blame them. I would have hated doing it as well. But I thought it was something that they needed to do because we need to keep them in some kind of physical shape. So they kept saying, "We want you. Why don't you do it? We want you. Hey, coach, you run too. We got to run. You should run." I said, "I'll tell you what. You guys win 4 games in a row. 4. Win 4 games in a row, and I'll do the base running. And you guys won't have to do the base running. I'll do it. And I'll do it right after you win that 4th game. I'll run around the bases before we leave." Oh yeah, yeah. They're all psyched. They're all psyched. And it was, I think it was more than once they won 3 in a row, and they were dying. They were gonna win that 4th game. Now I don't know if I was so clever as to take a look at the schedule and see that every 4th game would be against like Forest Hills or Flushing, where we probably weren't going to win anyway. But they never won that 4th game in a row. Thank God, because I never would have made it around those bases, and those guys would have never let me hear the end of it. But they were a lot of fun. They're a very good group of kids, and they were a lot of fun to coach. All these kids were a lot of fun to coach. I really enjoyed my time coaching. Now, I know what some of you thinking. How could you do a segment on sports and not talk about fencing? Well, because I have a lot to say about fencing, and that's going to be next time. So enjoy your weekend. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. I'll get the next episode up sometime either right before or right after the new year. So enjoy the holidays, and I'll see you soon. But actually, you know what? It always annoys me when people like on television say, "Well, I'll see you next time." No, you won't see me. I won't see you next time. You'll see me next time. Well, I can't see any of you. So in any event, have a wonderful holiday, and I'll see you next time.